From New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Saudi Arabia gathers Arab and Muslim leaders to discuss the Middle East conflict. Dozens of leaders, including Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, attending the summit. Rishi Sunak under pressure to sack Suella Braverman after she published a controversial article accusing the Metropolitan Police of political bias without Sunak's clearance. The Festival of Lights, Diwali, is being celebrated with traditional fervor across the world. India's northern state of Uttar Pradesh aims to set a new record with over 2.4 million oil lamps at 51 locations along the city's river fronts. And India will square off against Netherlands in Bengaluru on the final league fixture of the ODI World Cup. The men in blue are looking to end the first stage of the tournament with a flawless record. The Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi arrived in Riyadh to attend the extraordinary joint Islamic-Arab summit on the Israel-Gaza conflict. Saudi Arabia has gathered these Arab leaders to discuss this issue as the kingdom is leveraging its influence over its allies in a bid to end the conflict. The summit comes at a critical time as the conflict between Israel and the terrorist group Hamas enters its fifth week, prompting urgent calls for a united position among regional leaders. DD India's Mia Alberti reports from Beirut.
An extraordinary meeting under extraordinary circumstances. That's how Arab leaders have described Saturday's summit in Riyadh as the conflict between Israel and Hamas reaches the fifth week and more than 11,000 people have been killed in Gaza. Arab leaders said it's time to, quote, unify efforts and come out with a unified collective position. The summit was originally slated to host separate gatherings for the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the Arab League, but has been consolidated into one joint meeting, reflecting that urgency for a consolidated effort. Iran will be taking part of the meeting. It is the first time since the beginning of the conflict that will see Tehran at the table with all the other Arab countries. And before heading to Riyadh for the summit, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi said, quote, Gaza is not an arena for words, it should be for action, stating that the unity of Islamic countries at this time is crucial. And as leaders meet in Saudi Arabia, international pressure mounts on Israel to protect Palestinian civilians in Gaza. The situation in Gaza has been escalating with reports of intensified fighting near overcrowded hospitals, schools and refugee camps. On Friday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, during his visit to India, expressed concern over the high number of Palestinian casualties, but reaffirmed the U.S. support for Israel's campaign against the use of Gaza as what he called a platform for terrorism. Now, as leaders gather in Riyadh for this extraordinary summit, the world watches closely, hoping for a diplomatic breakthrough to end the violence in Gaza. Mia Alberti reporting in Beirut for DD India.
As the Israel-Hamas conflict continues to deepen, the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, say they have eliminated around 150 terrorists and gained control over Hamas strongholds in northern Gaza. The targets included Hamas arms production sites, launching stations and underground network. The IDF further said that Hamas was behind the failed missile launch at Shifa Hospital in Gaza. The IDF said the Hamas missile was aimed at Israeli troops operating nearby but failed in that effort. Israel has deployed the Iron Dome anti-missile system near Gaza border to intercept rockets launched by Hamas. The deployment has been made around 15 kilometers from the Gaza Strip. Once the radar detects incoming rocket projectiles, the system will launch missiles to intercept them. The Israel-Hamas conflict is deepening with each passing day, as we've said. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made a visit to an army base at the Gaza border. Netanyahu praised his soldiers for contributing to the safety and security of Israel. He also joined them for Sabbath service. The Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu responded to the French President Emmanuel Macron's call for Israel to stop attacking the civilians in Gaza. Netanyahu said that Hamas is responsible for those deaths and not Israel. Netanyahu further said that Israel is doing everything possible to avoid harming Gazan civilians, whereas Hamas is doing everything in its power to prevent them from leaving those safe zones, to move to safe zones. Israel Prime Minister added that Hamas is cruelly holding Israeli hostages, women, children, and the elderly in crime against humanity, and uses schools, mosques, and hospitals as terror command centers. He also said that Hamas is committing crimes in Gaza. Tomorrow it will spread such attacks all over the world. Dozens of migrants crossed from Mexico into the United States via the open edge of the border wall in the Chacumba Hot Springs in California, and with a record number of asylum seekers from all over the world. The U.S. border officials released thousands of migrants on the streets of San Diego area in October, including over 1,400 in the seaside town of Oceanside. The reigning champion Francisco Bagnaia of Ducati seized pole position at the Malaysian Grand Prix by setting a lap record on Saturday. Bagnaia put on a brilliant final lap at the Sepang International Circuit to secure his first pole and beat last year's Malaysia poleman Martin, who crashed in the final minutes of the season of the second qualifying session. The northern French town of Iquin-sur-Ballons has been hit with heavy rains, which has caused local rivers to overflow and flood the houses. Residents have been evacuated as more than 100 towers have been put on red alert. 100 towns have been put on red alert. A campsite owner, Joyez, is driving in the flooded town center and is also making the rounds in his town every day to help fellow citizens get around rising flood waters in a tractor. The electric sports car developer and manufacturer Rimac is racing forwards by going backwards. The Croatian manufacturer set a new record for an electric car, with its Navara reaching a top speed of 275.74 kilometers per hour in reverse. The first day of the Paris Peace Forum has wrapped up with leaders from around the world discussing global challenges, including climate change, also artificial intelligence. Despite the gathering of dignitaries and thought leaders, events in the Middle East have largely overshadowed the forum. DD India's correspondent Alex Kadia reports from Paris.
The Paris Peace Forum is certainly ambitious in the number of complex issues it's trying to tackle. Leaders from around the world, alongside heads of NGOs and business groups, have toiled over challenges ranging from melting polar ice caps to international standards in space and terrorist content online. Major breakthroughs or announcements weren't expected here. The goal is to bring together influential leaders from around the world, offering them a space to try and work out solutions to the most pressing issues of our time. NGOs like the Red Cross, Amnesty International all took part. Food security, climate refugees, green financing, all were discussed. But events in the Middle East loomed over this conference. A week ago, President Macron added a pre-conference conference to the agenda. Yesterday, leaders gathered to discuss the disastrous situation in Gaza. For the first time, the French leader, joined by the Palestinian Prime Minister and representatives from other Arab states, said humanitarian pauses should lead to an eventual ceasefire. With increased diplomatic pressure on Israel came practical solutions for Gaza. Cyprus's president proposed a maritime corridor for ships delivering aid to the Strip, possibly landing on its southwestern shores. The plan could provide an alternative to the difficult passage through land borders in Egypt or Israel. These proposals fit into the overarching theme of the Paris Peace Forum, a collective attempt to find solutions to some of the world's most complex and existential issues. Alex Kadia in Paris reporting for DD India.
Ukraine's capital, Kiev, came under an air attack on Saturday, and 2 explosions were heard. Earlier on Friday, the Ukrainian naval drones attacked and sank 2 small Russian landing ships in Crimea. What's happening is that the attack had been carried out by naval drones on 2 vessels in Vasuka Bay on the west side of the peninsula. It identified one landing craft as an Akula-class vessel. The other was a Cerna-class. The Ukrainian military said that the vessels were crewed and they were also loaded with armored vehicles. Ukraine says some Russian naval vessels have relocated from Sevastopol following recent attacks. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has embarked on an official visit to the United Kingdom. During his visit, Jaishankar will be holding discussions with his counterpart, the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, and will meet several other dignitaries. India and the UK have a growing bilateral partnership. The India-UK Comprehensive Strategic Partnership was launched in 2021, along with the India-UK Roadmap 2030. The roadmap is a commitment to a partnership that delivers for both the countries. Jaishankar's visit will give a new impetus to the friendly ties between the 2 countries. Pakistan has been asked by the International Monetary Fund to ensure strict implementation of anti-money laundering laws. The Federal Board of Revenue and the State Bank of Pakistan officials briefed the IMF regarding anti-money laundering and suspicious bank transactions during talks in Islamabad over the next review for the delivery of the $700 million loan tranche. The sources said that the SBP briefed the international lender on Pakistan's economic performance from July to March, while the FBR officials briefed the visiting delegation about tax crimes and also presented a report. An Islamabad accountability court on Friday ordered authorities to unfreeze the former Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's properties in the Toshkana reference case. The National Accountability Bureau judge issued the order on an application of the PMLN Supremo requesting the court to unfreeze his properties attached by the provincial government of Punjab after he was declared a proclaimed offender in the Toshkana case. The Accountability Court in Islamabad in 2020 ordered the forfeiting of assets and properties of the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif in the Toshkana reference. Spain witnessed protests in Madrid against the acting Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez over his pledge of amnesty for the Catalan separatists. Meanwhile, Sanchez inched closer to clinching another term in office after securing the support of the Basque Nationalist Party, PNV, and the Catalan separatist party, Junts. What's happening is that with the support of the Junts as well as the JNV, Sanchez is most likely to get that clear majority in the 350-member lower house in a vote in the coming days. Still to come here on DD India Live. Pressure mounts on British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to dispense with his Home Secretary Braverman. Opinion polls suggest that people in the US fancy Trump as their next president. And Mitchell Marsh hits a century, a mammoth one, as Australia warm up for the World Cup semi-finals.
Let's celebrate Diwali with Indian cinema. With glittering diyas, glowing and enthralling, sparkling as well as colorful lights.
Celebrate Diwali, joy, love, spread sweets, and understand what Diwali means.
Diwali, the festival of lights, is a significant Hindu celebration symbolizing the victory of light over darkness and good over evil.
Diwali has been one of Bollywood's cherished festivals.
You're watching DD India Live. My name is Mark Lynn. Pressure mounts on the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to sack one of his outspoken ministers, Suella Braverman. Her most recent offence is publishing an inflammatory article attacking the country's police that reports to her without the complete confidence of number 10 Downing Street. Here's more.
Britain's Home Secretary Suella Braverman made it clear at the end of October that she thought pro-Palestinian protests were instigated by hate.
Well, first of all, let me explain what we've seen over the last few weekends. We've seen now tens of thousands of people take to the streets following the massacre of Jewish people, the single largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, chanting for the erasure of Israel from the map. To my mind, there's only one way to describe those marches. They are hate marches.
Less than a fortnight later, there is pressure on British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to sack Braverman, this time for publishing an inflammatory article attacking the police's handling of a planned pro-Palestinian march. Earlier this week, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak demanded assurances from London's police chief that the pro-Palestinian march scheduled for the weekend would be held safely.
Yeah, this is a decision that the Metropolitan Police Commissioner has made, and he has said that he can ensure that he safeguards remembrance for the country this weekend, as well as keep the public safe. Now, my job is to hold him accountable for that, and we've asked the police for information on how they will ensure that this happens.
Braverman seems to think these marches should not go on, but the police service, which believes it acts independently, thinks otherwise.
If over the next few days the intelligence evolves further and we get to such a high threshold, and it's only been done once in a decade, where we need to say to the Home Secretary we think it's got to the stage we need to ban the march element, then of course we will do. But that's the last resort that we haven't reached yet.
Braverman, as Home Secretary, is responsible for policing and national security. However, her hardline comments have made her more moderate colleagues feel uncomfortable. Downing Street is investigating how the article happened in the Times without changes suggested by the Prime Minister's office. Under the government's code of conduct, ministers must seek approval from Downing Street for announcements, speeches, press releases, and new policy initiatives. Braverman has not apologized, and her conduct may well be seen as an affront to Sunak's leadership. Sunak is left with a hard choice. Should he sack a disruptive cabinet colleague who, if sacked, could become a rival and a critique?
Well, the UK economy is stagnating, but it's not in recession, according to the country's latest official GDP figures. There had been a widespread expectation that the UK would have entered recession in the third quarter of the year. DD India correspondent Stuart Smith reports.
This latest data means the value of goods and services produced by the UK barely changed from July to September at 0.0%. Imports were down in the third quarter, reflecting a lack of domestic spending, according to the Office for National Statistics. It says a small drop in the services sector and health and commercial property rentals was partially offset by small gains in the engineering, car sales and machinery leasing sectors. Some economists point to Bank of England monetary policy as the most relevant factor, with high interest rates successfully reducing inflation but also stifling growth. The New Economics Foundation blames institutional factors like a lack of investment in healthcare, resulting in people being too sick to work, and blaming high energy bills due to underinvestment in home insulation and alternative energy sources. The lack of growth is widely expected to continue into 2024, hovering around 0%, with the jury out on whether minimal growth or minimal recession is more likely over the next few months. Since just before the COVID pandemic, UK GDP has grown 1.8%, which puts it ahead of France, Germany and Japan, but means it's less productive than Italy and Canada. The US stands out amongst G7 nations, having grown 8% since before the pandemic. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, who is responsible for government spending, says his new budget, to be announced the week after next, will focus on unlocking investment, getting people back into work and reforming public services to improve growth. The opposition Labour Party says the figures are further evidence the economy's not working under the Conservatives and working people are worse off. Stuart Smith in London, reporting for DD India.
Recent polls have suggested that Donald Trump is ahead of the U.S. President Joe Biden in 5 of the 6 most important battleground states, 1 year before the 2024 election. The results show Biden losing to Trump, his likeliest Republican rival, by margins of 4 to 10 percentage points among registered voters in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. President Biden is ahead only in Wisconsin by 2 percentage points. This is what the poll has found. And the U.S. President Joe Biden's re-election campaign has officially filed the paperwork. This is in South Carolina Democratic primary. Vice President Kamala Harris on Friday made a surprise visit to the Palmetto State to hand Biden's registration papers to the state's Democratic chairperson and thank the officials for helping her and Biden to get to the White House 4 years ago.
And so to be here today and to just for a moment appreciate this moment in the context of history, first in the nation, and then putting it in the context of what happened in 2020, when it was South Carolina that created the path to the White House for Joe Biden and me. South Carolina, who understood and believed in the promise of America and the importance of, with optimism, fueled by a sense of hope and understanding of what is possible, then fought for our democracy and for right of all people to participate.
U.S. House of Representatives, the Republicans there are all set to release a stopgap measure to avert a partial government shutdown on Saturday, the morning after the Moody's credit agency lowered its outlook on the government's credit ratings to negative. The U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson has spent days in talks with members of his slim 221 to 212 Republican majority about several CR options. The Republican-controlled House and the Democratic-led Senate must agree on a vehicle that President Biden can sign into a law before the current funding expires on November the 17th. Moody cited political polarization in the Congress as a factor in making the decision to lower the credit outlook, saying that Washington may not be able to reach an agreement to make its growing deficits more affordable. The U.S. recorded a $1.7 trillion deficit last year, the largest outside the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and rising interest rates mean that the cost of servicing that debt will continue to grow. Just a few months ago, the U.S. Congress brought the U.S. to the brink of defaulting on its more than $31 trillion debt, a move that would have shaken the world financial markets. Coxs Bazar, which is a popular tourist destination in Bangladesh, has a new railway connection. The Bangladesh Prime Minister Hasina on Saturday inaugurated the much-awaited 102-kilometer Chattogram-Coxs Bazar dual-gauge single railway line. Addressing the inauguration program at the newly constructed railway station, Hasina said that the new railway line will ensure fast and smooth train services from Chattogram to Coxs Bazar. In the future, the railway line will be connected with the under-construction Matarbari deep-sea port. As part of the Trans-Asian Railway Network, this is also expected to improve access to Myanmar and beyond. Earlier this month, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Bangladeshi counterpart Hasina jointly inaugurated 3 India-assisted projects in Bangladesh. Of them, 2 were railway line projects: the 12.24-kilometer Akhura-Agartala cross-border rail line and the Khulna-Mongla port rail line. And with the completion of these development projects in the railway sector of Bangladesh, connectivity in the sub-region has been enhanced. Air pollution has emerged as one of the biggest environmental health risks of our times. Well, according to the UN, air pollution kills an estimated 7 million people every year. And the Changemakers program this week, we meet innovators who are providing unique solutions to challenge air pollution.
Air pollution is one of the most pressing environmental and public challenges of our time. It is, you can call it an invisible enemy that affects the health of not just few hundreds, but few billions, and the vitality of ecosystems, the economy of nations, and so on. At AMBI, we believe that the fight against air pollution begins with reliable data. If you can't measure it, you cannot solve it. So our innovations are designed to provide real-time actionable insights into air quality. We leverage all the latest, greatest technology. We have proprietary data from proprietary sensors, advanced algorithms. We're not just keeping up with the challenge, but we're also working a lot harder to stay ahead of it.
Well, you can watch a brand new episode of Changemakers. It's coming on Sunday, the 12th of November at 8 p.m. Indian Standard Time and 2:30 p.m. GMT. Well, India's President Draupadi Murmu has sent her greetings to fellow citizens on the eve of Deepavali. In her message, the President said, and I quote, "On the auspicious occasion of Deepavali, I extend my warm greetings and best wishes to all fellow citizens living in India and abroad. Deepavali is a festival of joy and happiness. It is celebrated to mark the victory of light over darkness, good over evil, and justice over injustice. People of different religions and faiths celebrate this festival and spread the message of love, brotherhood, and harmony. This festival is a symbol of kindness, positivity, and prosperity. The festival of Deepavali illuminates our conscience and inspires us to work for the welfare of humanity. One lamp can light up many others, and in the same manner, we can bring happiness and prosperity in the lives of the poor and needy by sharing our joys with them. Let us celebrate the Festival of Lights safely and take the pledge for the nation building by contributing in the conservation of the environment." The northern Indian city of Ayodhya, it's holding a grand Deepotsav celebration on the eve of Diwali. The Chief Minister of the state, Yogi Adityanath, arrived at Ayodhya's Ram Katha Park, and he is going to attend the Deepotsav celebrations. Marking the celebration of the Festival of Lights, the city is set to create a Guinness World Record, and it's going to be over 2.4 million earthen lamps at 51 embankments to illuminate the city. Ahead of the Shobha Yatra, which is part of the Deepotsav celebrations, artists showcased vibrant performances of music and dance. India will be keen to remain unbeaten at the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup as they head into the knockout stage of the tournament, full of momentum when they host the Netherlands in Bengaluru on Sunday. It looks like a clash between David and Goliath, with the Netherlands languishing at the bottom of the standings and India right at the top with without even losing a match. But one should never underestimate the Dutch. Our correspondent says the talented Netherlands outfit showed that they are up to class when they had upset South Africa, the second-place team, earlier in the tournament, and their victory over Bangladesh was also quite impressive. They will, however, need all their star players to be at their best to topple India, with the performances of Bas the Lead, Max Odode, Logan Van Beek and the skipper Scott Edwards to be pivotal in their hope. Well, we did just say coming up that we were going to tell you about Mitchell Marsh. Well, he is keeping up the momentum. We know that Glenn Maxwell hit 201 in the last match, and Mitchell Marsh has hit 177 not out in this match. Australia is looking good as they head into the semi-finals. That's all we have in this edition of DD India Live, but let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, and on Twitter, on Instagram. But we'll be back with news as it breaks here on DD India. My name is Mark Lynn. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.